3:11 in the morning, I opened cage C. The status lights were steady blue. The thermostat read 64 degrees. Every server in rack C13 was powered down and cold to the touch. The breathing did not stop. Slow, wet, on a human count. In through the teeth, out through the nose. I put my flashlight between the rails to see what was making it. Something on the other side breathed back, and the lens fogged in my hand. Incident report, Meridian East Data Services, Building 2. Reporting officer, Leon Varga, Contract Security, Blue Watch Protective. Shift hours, 1900 to 0700, October 14th. This report concerns unauthorized access alarms and a sound source inside colocation hall C, rack C13. Personal note: the department form has no field for something that sounds alive inside a locked server cabinet, so I'm adding one. The shift started ordinary. Badge in at 1852. Radio check at 1857. Exterior sweep at 1910. Building 2 is a windowless box behind chain link, half office, half raised floor. Meridian logs everything to the minute, so I log everything. At 21:43, camera C Hall 03 went dim for 2 seconds. Not dark, dim, the way a lens goes when a thumb passes over it and lifts away. No fault code registered. At 21:44. The panel logged cage C opening for 1 second, then locking again. No badge triggered it. Procedure for a ghost open is simple. Verify camera, check the strike plate, walk the aisle. I took Hall C at 21:49 with a flashlight and my sight keys. Hall C runs cold and loud, but it's an even kind of loud: fans, air handlers, the raised floor ticking through its vents. You learn the rhythm in a week. The rhythm had a gap in it. Cages C11 through C16 sit 3 rows back. I heard the gap before I reached C13. Under the fan noise, something else was breathing. Slow, 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out. Wet on the inhale. The cage door was locked, tamper tag intact. Camera had a clean line on it. I put my light through the mesh, rack labels, patch panels, dark server faces. Nothing moved. Then the breathing stopped. Not faded. Stopped the way a person goes quiet when they notice you're listening. On the floor under the rack, in the dust, was a wet print. Not a shoe. 5 long marks pressed, dragged back under the cabinet. At 22:06, I called the on-call engineer, Nolan Price, per policy. He arrived at 22:41 in jeans and steel toes, a Meridian fleece pulled over a sleep shirt. Nolan trusts a multimeter more than he trusts people. I find that reasonable. I showed him the log and the camera dip. I didn't mention the print. I wanted him to find it. We went into cage C together. He checked the door contact, rack's power draw on the PDU screen, talking the whole time, serial numbers, load percentages, the client's decommissioned gear waiting on disposal. Ordinary noise. It helped. At C13, he stopped talking. Inside the cage, the breathing was clearer. A catch at the end of each inhale, like fluid caught somewhere it shouldn't be. Nolan crouched to place it, the way you track a bad fan bearing. Then he saw the dust. Not one print now. A dozen layered palms, knuckles, fingertip drags, all of them pointed inward toward the cabinet. He said we'd kill the rack at the breaker. The PDU already read 0. At 23:03, Nolan confirmed it. Top switch dark. Server trays cold. No fans spinning anywhere in C13. He popped the blanking panel loose with a quarter turn and set it on the floor. The breathing moved deeper into the rack. That's the plainest way I can put it. It had sounded like it came from the middle of the cabinet. Once the panel was off, it slid back and down, the way a person moves when they're crawling away from a light. Nolan said it might be an animal in the cable void. We both knew Building 2 doesn't have gaps that size. Still, we opened the rear door. Fiber bundles tied clean, no nest, no droppings, no opening wide enough for cat. Something struck the inside of the side panel once, soft, enough to pop the metal. Nolan flinched back into the next rack. I keyed my radio for backup and got a burst of static. Under the hiss, a voice said clearly, "Site secure." It was mine. At 23:17, with comms dead inside Hall C, Nolan went to the office side for a wired phone. I stayed at Cage C, watching the aisle like he told me. I've wished since that I hadn't listened. A data hall has a sound when someone's in it, footsteps through the floor pedestals, a radio crackle, a zipper against a badge. Once Nolan left, Hall C went too exact. Fans, air, my own breath. Nothing under it. Then a floor tile in front of C13 lifted a quarter inch and settled. It lifted again. This time I saw why. Fingertips, pale, dirt packed under the nails, working the edge of the tile from the black void beneath the floor. Patient, finding purchase. I stamped down on it, hard, the fingers pulled back. Something below made a small, surprised sound, not angry, hurt. The breathing started again. Not in the rack this time. Under the floor, one aisle over. Then behind me, tracking my feet toward the cage door. When Nolan came back across the hall, he wasn't alone. A second me walked beside him on the monitor. I didn't see it in person. I saw it on the wall of monitors after I'd already run. Nolan shouted from the aisle, and I came out of Cage C fast enough to skin my wrist on the latch. He was alone in front of me, just him, the desk phone, a coil of cable. I asked who he'd brought in. He thought I was joking. We reached security at 23:26 and pulled Hall C on playback. The footage showed what I'd seen. Nolan entering the frame, me stepping toward him from the cage, and a second me, half a step behind him, matching his stride. Same uniform, same flashlight ring on the belt, head tipped down so the face stayed dark. It stopped at the threshold of Cage C and turned to face the lens. The jaw worked twice before it settled in place. The cheeks moved like something was pressing them from underneath. Then it smiled, and my teeth were arranged wrong in its mouth, crowded, doubled, too many for the jaw that held them. On the next camera, it was already gone. The floor tile at C13 was still standing open. Midnight is when this stopped being a maintenance ticket. Nolan called his supervisor. I called dispatch from the landline, since radios inside Hall C were still dead. 2 officers arrived at 0018. They watched the footage and did what officers do when a story sounds impossible, but the people telling it don't. They went to look themselves. Officer Dane entered cage C first. Mercer covered the aisle. Nolan stayed at the door. C13 stood open at both ends. The tile still shifted aside. Dane knelt to check under the rack. Something took his forearm and pulled. On camera, his shoulder jerked forward in one motion, like a cable had snapped tight around his wrist from underneath the cabinet. He went into the elbow. Mercer and Nolan grabbed him and hauled backward, all 3 straining. Dane came free. He left skin on the rail where his watch caught, and there was blood on the floor. But that isn't what put Mercer on his knees. It was the hand still locked around Dane's wrist. It had 6 fingers. Every one of them wore one of my company gloves. Officers ordered a full evacuation of Building 2. Fire panel, lights, muster in the lot. I walked the office staff out while EMTs wrapped Dane's arm. He kept saying it had felt cold and dry until it reached his pulse. Then it started breathing through his skin. At 0047, someone noticed Nolan was gone. Last seen heading into security to pull last week's archives. I went in with Mercer because I knew the layout and because 6 years on this job has taught me courage is mostly paperwork filed on time. The office side sat dark except for monitor glow. Nolan's fleece lay on the floor by desk 3. His chair had rolled back on its own. On the center screen, Hall C was live. Cage C stood open. Something wearing Nolan's fleece crossed the frame on all 4s, joints moving wrong, and dropped through the open tile. Mercer reached for the keyboard to freeze the frame. That was when I heard breathing under the desk. Not one set, several. One of them had my catch in it. Something below said my employee number in Nolan's voice. BWP 7741. If this uploads, don't send night shift alone. Subscribe if you want the next report they pull off this terminal.